Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
If Molly had ever been told, even in a delusional dream, that she would choose such a dress for her wedding, she would have laughed. But now, standing in the fitting room and looking at the ruffles on the dress, she was sure it was just right. "Let's arrange a photo shoot for you," Kathy said excitedly. "Like you're all dirty Cinderella in a floor cloth, sitting in some back alley, this will be the first part of the photo shoot. And then I'll shoot you at the wedding, where you're all of yourself, such a queen, going to the groom in love. That would be the bomb. No one usually looks at wedding photos, and you'll show them to your grandchildren." Molly listened to Kathy and realized that there was no way to get rid of her crazy idea, so it was better to save her nerves and agree. Kathy was a stubborn and persistent girl. Probably, if she were just a friend, everything would be solved easier. Molly would just stop communicating with her. But what to do if this glamorous tank got you as a sister? Actually, they were only half-sisters. Kathy was her father's daughter from his first marriage. Molly treated her evenly, even with some sympathy, but she would hardly be friends with such a person. The girls were too different in character and upbringing. If it weren't for Daddy, Molly thought for the umpteenth time. If only Dad hadn't been so stubborn, I could have kept a cool sibling relationship. But Dad had gotten it into his head that his daughters had to be best friends. "Dad, we're very different from each other, and she's 10 years older than me. What do we have in common? We didn't even watch the same cartoons when we were kids. Molly, I've had this conversation about every few months or so. I don't count on my father's understanding. Kathy likes one thing and I like another. We can't even decide what movie to watch. She likes dresses and I like jeans. She likes Asian food, and I'm allergic to seafood. I mean, no, I'm nice to her, but we just have nothing to be friends about." Dad, as usual, remained adamant. "If you need a reason to be friends, you can consider blood relation a good reason. You're still young, Molly. You don't understand a lot of things." "Dad, are you sure?" The girl snorts. "Why do you think so?" "Because," nonchalantly answered the father, "because I'm older than you and I've seen a lot of things in my life, more than you can imagine. And I know all too well that partners, friends, buddies, all that is good, but how many of them will stay by your side in a difficult moment? It's good if it's one too, but family people won't let you down. One's own friend is one's own friend. And now I had to agree to a stupid photo shoot. Go early in the morning to some creepy second-hand store on the outskirts of town and try on the creepy rag Kathy had picked out. The dress, once white, had lost its color, probably 20 to 30 years ago. Now it looked dirty gray, and in some places there were yellow spots. These were located in the armpit area, and gray-brown, which had a place of honor on the straps and hem. The zipper on the back had obviously been replaced at some point. Otherwise, how else to explain the fact that the zipper was not white or even gray in the tone of the dress color? The zipper was scarlet, and from afar it could appear as a bloody scratch on the bride's back. "Vintage," proudly announced the saleswoman, showing Molly this amazing outfit. "Now such a thing is in trend. That's why we decided not to display it in the general hall. You know, customers are different. They grab it with dirty hands. They can even tear it carelessly, and things are rare and, not cheap." Molly nodded, not giving away her amazement at the sight of this masterpiece. "It's really exclusive," she said seriously. "I've never seen anything like it before. I'll tell you more and you will not see," joyfully praised the saleswoman. "I know what you're thinking right now. You think I want to sell you a shabby old thing, cheap, for the price of a new thing, don't you? Don't answer that. I know that's what you're thinking. But if you try this thing on and compare it to any other similar item from any other store, you'll see the difference. You don't believe me? Then go to the fitting room. Molly, indignant at the saleswoman's insistence, did not object. Of course, this lady has a vested interest. She probably makes no salary, lives on a percentage of sales. There were no customers here, not a single one in half an hour. And who needs second-hand? Located in an industrial zone and squeezed between garages, which ingenious owners converted into a flea market. In 2 garages from here they sold potatoes, and in the next garage they sold fruit. The garage opposite the second was decorated with a huge sign, "Shoemaker's Workshop," and to the left of it a man dressed in a tracksuit, judging by his crimson nose and cheeks, drinking heavily, was seated on a low stool. Right in front of him were 2 wooden crates. On one of them were piled a huge pile of brooms for the bath. On the second crate were small bunches of flowers, the height of a woman's palm. The small red-orange flowers, which were abundant in every front garden, suggested that the merchant was probably there to replenish his stock. Walking through this improvised market, mostly pensioners and even women of indeterminate age with a bunch of children. What can I say? To work in such a place, and the enemy would not wish. Should we be surprised at the eagerness of the saleswoman? The fitting room was the far side of the garage, separated from the sales floor by a curtain on a rope. Molly pulled the curtain, leaving her alone with a rectangular mirror leaning against the wall. "If you want, I'll give you shoes," the saleswoman shouted from behind the curtain. "You'll be able to evaluate the whole image. Here, girl, take them." And from behind the curtain a woman's hand holding the shoes appeared from the side. The shoes were large in size, pointed toe, and without backs, but they did have heels, and even too high. "Thank you." Molly decided to be polite by all means, though she wanted to send this annoying person away. The dress was indeed impressive. Besides the color, the stains, the bright red zipper, it had a few other interesting features. First, the neckline, which was supposed to be asymmetrical, was symmetrical without measure. Because of this, any, even balletic posture, automatically began to seem skewed. Secondly, not only the bodice and hem, but also the waist of the dress were decorated with ruffles. The caterpillar effect. Molly laughed. "I always wondered what I would look like if I sat on chips and hamburgers and mayonnaise." Besides, the previous owner of this vintage luxury was clearly shorter than Molly, 10 pounds shorter, the hem of the skirt not reaching her ankles. In this, the girl thought, there's an upside to that too. Even in rainy weather, the hem in a puddle will not get dirty. "What's up? How's it going?" The sales girl called her again, and Molly resolutely pulled the curtain back into the hall. "How do you like me?" she asked and spun on the spot, spreading her arms apart. "Do I look good?" "Does it look good?" the saleswoman exclaimed. "You ask me, girl. It looks great on you. It's unbelievable. You look like a fairy tale princess. What a waist. I can't take my eyes off it. And the lace, the ruffles, so delicate, so delicate. How can you not go for it?" "No way." Molly caught the eye of the broom and flower merchant. The expression on the man's face was more eloquent than any words. He looked at the girl, slightly opened his mouth, in his gaze mixed bewilderment and pity. "It happens." That's what was written on his face in arched letters. For a second he squeezed his eyes shut and shook his head, as if to see if he had seen Molly in that outfit. "I'll take that dress." The girl smiled. "Just find me a bag of some kind." How nice to deal with such customers. The saleswoman blossomed. Now, when the intense desire to impose a purchase Replaced by the joy of the deal, she relaxed and spoke almost sincerely. And Molly suddenly noticed that the saleswoman was definitely not more than 30, and she was even very pretty. "When you came in, I immediately saw that you are a tasteful, understanding girl. I have a good eye. I've been working here for a while." The price to be paid for the purchase was unreasonably high. Molly realized that if you haggle, then surely you can get a significant discount. Who else, for God's sake, would need this work of sartorial art? But she didn't feel like haggling. She was already tired of this store, of this miserable neighborhood, where everything was as dull, as lightless, as gray as the wedding dress for which she had just paid a fabulous amount of money for such a rag. If it were possible to teleport from here, slap, and you are already in another place, preferably in her favorite coffee shop, where the cozy light, the tabletop of pink marble, the exquisite coffee aroma wafting over the cup, made of inconceivably fine porcelain. And then there is the sweet waitress Betty. She always smiles so genuinely at Molly. And Michael is a true wizard, a master of vanilla chocolate magic, always saving a few chocolate hearts with apricot filling. These are your favorites. I've set aside the best ones, and she'll make a caramel cheesecake sauce especially for her. That's where I'm going." The girl instantly decided as she left the store. The seller of flowers and brooms sympathetically smiled at her, and then took one of his polo wilted bouquets in his hands. "Here you go. This is for you. No money. You do not look that they wilted, the goods first grade. When you put them in water at home, they'll come to life." "Thank you," Molly mumbled, accepting the street vendor's gift. "I wish you a good trade." She squeezed between the makeshift stalls, hurrying to get to the corner where she had left the car, but, as luck would have it, it began to rain frequently, and the few market visitors hurried away, trying to hide from the damp, and the vendors rushed to cover the trays with plastic sheeting. Several times Molly ran into the same elderly woman who was walking from one stall to another, talking loudly on the phone. She had her head wrapped in a plastic bag, so she wasn't afraid of getting wet. But Molly, it seemed to her, was deliberately getting in the way and making it difficult to move. "You're everywhere, aren't you?" shouted the woman after another collision with the girl. "Why are you following me? What do you want?" "Sorry, I didn't do it on purpose." Almost crying, Molly replied. No one had ever raised her voice, and the rudeness of the pensioner frightened her. But not 10 pounds away, she could see the corner where the car was waiting, and that gave her strength. "Excuse me." Once again she repeated, rushing forward. "I'm so sorry." Something was shouted at her back, but Molly didn't stop to answer. "Hurry, get out of here." Already in the car, Molly noticed that she was clutching the wet bouquet in her hand. How disgusting! She irritably threw the flowers on the back seat. Nothing in just half an hour she would be in the warmth, among smiles and wonderful aromas, and could forget this nightmarish morning. The coffee shop was still empty at this hour. Usually the place began to fill up after noon, when the socialites, tired from last night's party, woke up and wanted to gossip. There were plenty of guests, but newcomers often appeared. Betty always recognized them by their tired grace, their lack of makeup, and their requests for plaid. The girls, they always looked like girls no matter how old they were moving around in their oversized sweaters, wrapped their palms around huge mugs of hot chocolate, and didn't forget to take selfies with their phones. The amazing thing is, these ladies always had some kind of party the night before, after which they needed to get some sleep. And there was never a morning where they had nothing to discuss. After 3:00 p.m., it was time for stylish, well-groomed business ladies. Even here, while eating delicate desserts, They never let go of their phones and tablets for a second. Business comes first. Michael is the best pastry chef in the coffee shop, Betty confided. Most businesswomen quickly become overweight. And you know why? They eat without distractions, so they pass it on. Here you ate a piece of cake, and you didn't taste it because you were distracted by an urgent call at the time. Is that a shame? Yes, it is. You have to order more. But then there's another call that you can't miss. So if you want to stay slim, don't let yourself be distracted while eating. In the evenings, the crowd here was mixed, and that was the busiest time. And early mornings, that was the time for Molly and a few other early birds. Today, however, Molly was running late. Has our princess shown up yet? Michael peeked out of the kitchen. Betty shook her head. No, I don't think she will. Don't you read the news? Michael grinned. The news? In the tone of an oracle, he said. Reading is bad for you. I'm not ready to soak up negative emotions and poison the food I cook with them. The waitress snorted. He's always like that. You never know if he's joking or serious. The bell on the door rang melodiously, and there was no time to explain. Molly, slightly drenched in rain, appeared on the doorstep of the coffee shop. Good morning. Betty smiled. You must be cold. Shall I bring you a blanket while your order is being prepared? Yes, please do. The girl hurried to her favorite spot. It was not a deep alcove in the wall with a beige-brown sofa covered with cushions. On the shelves stylized under stone ledges smiled with affectionate warmth, lamps, candles. On the sofa loved to lounge on the general favorite, a luxurious Persian cat. A couple of years ago, someone from the staff brought here a blue-eyed Persian kitten, red-brown in color. At that time, this institution was not as successful as it is now, but with the appearance of a fluffy kitty, the situation has changed. Visitors began to be attracted here like a magnet. The little one was named Praline and was allowed to walk around the hall whenever she wanted. She became the mascot of the coffee house, and a funny belief quickly spread among the guests. A good day awaits the one to whom the beautiful Praline will jump on the lap. This time the cat was not in its usual place. She had gone somewhere since last night. Betty explained sadly. She'll probably come back, maybe even pregnant. We haven't sterilized her. She will. Molly said, Don't look so sad, Betty. Would you like me to take your mind off things for a while? My girlfriends and I decided to have a Cinderella-style photo shoot at our bachelorette party. You won't believe where I went to find the right dress. By the way, it's not very far from here. But Betty, you should have seen it. Can you believe it? There's garages and garages and garages and garages, and each one's been converted into a store. But store is a bit of a mouthful. The people there are wild, not people, but goblins. But I found the dress. In general, if you want a thrill, you don't need to watch horror movies anymore. Just go to those places. You won't regret it. You've never been there? No? Betty shrugged her shoulders and smiled crookedly. Why not? I've lived there since I was a kid. And my daddy has a store in one of those garages, too. He sells vegetables and fruit, and they're always the freshest and tastiest. Molly blinked helplessly. I should have said that. Who was pulling her tongue? I'm sorry, Betty. I didn't mean to. I'm used to other places, and I said it out of surprise. Oh, how could I do that? I'm sorry again. The waitress nodded dryly. Your order will be ready in a minute. Molly shook her head tiredly. What kind of day was this? Such a horrible day. Some grandmother had yelled at her. She'd gotten soaked in the rain, and now Betty had hurt her for nothing. Molly, not unlike many of her friends and even her half-sister, was brought up strictly. Kathy was always yelling at the driver in the cab, calling sales assistants stupid. And the pedicure master could easily get from her a poke with her foot for not evenly trimmed cuticle. That wasn't the case with Molly. She still remembered the fight her father had gotten her into when she, an 11-year-old Moshorka, in a fit of teenage rebellion, had once sassed her nanny. Rules of behavior were not invented by fools. They're there so people can interact without any silly scandals. Molly yawned. She hated lectures, and she found her father's calm demeanor intolerable. Just once he'd lost his temper, screamed, broken something, but Dad never lost his temper. "And I am bored with life, without any silly scandals," daringly she answered, looking her father in the eye. He was not confused, did not tremble. "Then scandalize with your girlfriends. But if a person works for you, it does not give you any right to humiliate him." My father said then. "First of all, because only plebeians behave like that. A man from a decent society would never allow himself to stoop like that. Besides, you mustn't forget that the nanny can quit and get a job with another family the very next day. And we'll have to spend a lot of time before we find a decent replacement. Is your precious Kathy a common plebeian too?" Molly asked in an innocent tone. "I'm not prepared to discuss it." Father cut her off. "But neither do I intend to repeat the same parenting mistakes I made with Kathy, and now you'd better apologize to your nanny." To better learn the lesson, the father for 2 weeks deprived Molly cash pocket money and forbade the use of credit cards. Subsequently, the girl was convinced many times that her father's teachings were not wasted. Molly finally made sure of it in his 17 years. When it was time for the first love, the guy she was in love with all through the school year invited her to a cafe. The girl couldn't remember herself from happiness, but all her love unknowingly evaporated when she saw how rude to the waitresses, the young man. In the young waitress, the guy threw a plate because he thought there were frozen vegetables in the salad. Molly tasted the salad as well, and the vegetables were fresh. Apparently, the young man decided to impress in this way. The waitress was replaced, the salad was apologized for, but the matter did not end there. Her suitor had a new idea of fun. Now he was mocking the young man who served them juice. As soon as the waiter turned his back for a moment, the jolly boy knocked the glass to the floor. "Why do you always put the glasses on the very edge of the table?" He was indignant. "Don't they teach you anything at all?" Molly left before dinner was over. Dazed admirer ran after her all the way to the exit, and all persuaded to say what she did not like so much, but she would not answer him. To her father's question as to why she had returned so soon, Molly answered briefly, "He is a plebeian," and no further explanation was needed. But now she herself had behaved worse than any plebeian. Shame on her! The girl did not immediately realize that someone was staring at her, and therefore she even flinched when she saw the blue cat eyes watching her intently from under the table. "Sweet Candy, is that you? How you scared me!" Molly leaned over to the cat. "It's so good to have the kitty back. Maybe it's a sign that the rest of the day is going to turn out well. Come here, kitty cat. Here, kitty, 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 kitty." The cat ignored the guest's flirtations, wagged its tail lazily, and turned away. "Oh, come on! What happened? Didn't you recognize me?" Pralin didn't even turn her head in the girl's direction and walked leisurely past her toward the kitchen. For some reason, this arrogant feline indifference was offensive. "Your order." Betty placed a cup of coffee and a plate with an impressive piece of cheesecake on the table. Molly smiled, almost pleadingly, at the waitress. She was still terribly embarrassed about her rudeness, but the main thing was that she really felt good about Betty and didn't want to offend her. She touched the edge of her plate with her finger. "Did Michael make the sauce especially for me?" she said. She asked, just to make a point. Betty did not respond to her smile. "The chef's sauce is a separate charge, and it's priced accordingly. You'll probably have to save money now, but you don't have to pay for the coffee." "What?" Molly looked up at the still face Betty. "I don't understand." "I already apologized, didn't I?" The waitress allowed herself to smile with the tips of her lips. "Information gets into the news quickly, and we're goblins, but we're literate." "What information?" "Yeah, what are you talking about?" "Coffee's on the house." "Cold," repeated Betty. "Bon appetit." Praline followed the waitress, giving Molly a contemptuous look. What was Betty saying? "What kind of information? What kind of news?" Molly pulled out her phone, hoping to make sense of the overly complicated innuendo. "News, then." The screen flashed alarmingly with 28 missed calls. Yeah, of course she hadn't heard. She was always forgetting her phone in the car. Good thing she hadn't forgotten it now. The girl opened the full list of missed calls. There was only one number on it. "Dad, I left my phone in the car. I didn't hear anything." "Did something happen?" "I see." Dad sighed. "You still don't look at the news, Dad?" She was getting nervous. For some reason, everyone is always talking about the news. Isn't it hard to tell a human what happened? Dad didn't answer. "Dad, where are you?" "Can you hear me?" "Yes." Dad was speaking very clearly now, almost separating the syllables. "I can hear my daughter." "I'm sorry, Molly, but you're gonna have to go through this life without my support." "Yeah, what are you talking about?" Nervousness turned to panic, and the feeling grew stronger that this was all just a stupid prank. "Why are you always talking in riddles? What happened?" Everything happened. Dad exploded and Molly got it. No, it's not a prank. Her dad, always so poised, so reasonable, yelled into the phone, which had never happened before. "I don't have any more money. Do you realize that? I'm broke, and you're broke with me. Do you get it?" Finally, my father hung up the phone. Molly stared at the dimmed screen of her cell phone for a few seconds, then awkwardly rose from her seat. "The bill," she shouted. As if by magic, Betty appeared beside her. "Here you go." Molly threw a credit card on the table. "Just a minute." Betty smiled politely. "I apologize, but your card is blocked." Molly shook her head. "That's impossible." "Try again." The waitress repeated all the manipulations with the card. "I'm sorry, but your card is blocked." Molly slowly sank down on the couch. "So it's true?" She said to no one in particular. She searched all her pockets. There was some cash in one of them. "Here, take this. It will probably be enough, won't it?" Praline, following Betty everywhere, snorted. "Come here, kitty." Molly called to her pitifully. "Will you at least take pity on me?" But the cat defiantly turned away. "It seems we are no longer loved here." Molly whispered, and she didn't realize whether she was trying to make a joke or had accidentally voiced an unpleasant truth. Molly walked out of the coffee shop and headed for the car. Kathy was already flooding her sister with messages. Her cards, of course, had been blocked too, and she was now in a near hysterical state, sniping Molly's phone. "Come over here soon." She cried into the receiver. "Pay for my shopping. I'm at the checkout line at the mall. I've got tons of stuff, and none of my cards work." Well, who'd doubt it? Her sister's ability to spend all day at the mall was well known. "I'm sorry, Kathy," Molly interrupted her. "I can't help you right now. I have exactly the same story, and you have no conscience." The sister almost roared. There's a line of people here, all freaking out. And I'm standing here like a beggar. I'm ashamed. So give up shopping." The girl got angry. "I don't have any money." "Okay, bye." There was no doubt Kathy would call back, and then call back 10 or even 20 more times. Just put it on auto dial, hoping to harass the recipient so he'd eventually break down and pick up. But I didn't have time for that right now, and I'm getting married tomorrow. Molly suddenly remembered. The thought of the imminent wedding was crushing, and the girl burst into tears, burying her forehead into the steering wheel. Even this morning, life had been very different. In this life, Molly was the daughter of a more than well-to-do man, and she had everything she could ever want. A young, spoiled girl, fancy clothes, an expensive car, and the latest model phone, lots of girlfriends, traveling and partying. In this life, the future was as plain and simple as the change of seasons. She would marry James because their fathers are best friends and longtime business partners. When one of them had a son and the other a daughter, they decided that their children would marry as soon as they were in their 20s. From an early age, Molly knew she would become James' wife and did not resist it. Dad, smart, sensible as ever, explained to her that it was best for everyone. "Of course," he said, "I know that most people prefer to choose their own spouse. And that's not stupid when it comes to people living ordinary lives. Their children become grown up and independent early. They have to decide who to study for and whether to study at all. They barely out of high school start earning and learning to live on their earnings while trying to help their parents. They gain experiences that neither you nor James have. You grew up like rare flowers in a greenhouse. How are you supposed to know what kind of person you want in a family? You don't even know yourself yet. We've tried to raise you for each other, me and Father James. I can't promise you the euphoria of marriage, but I think you'll live peacefully. Besides, you won't have to worry about money. The wedding will be a good opportunity to merge our companies, and one of your heirs will take over the business in the future. Do you have any objections? What about love?" Out of sheer stubbornness, the girl asked. The father shrugged his shoulders. "Love the lottery. It's not wise to take risks when there's too much at stake. Business reputation, fortune. Finally, the physical, mental health of future children. If you want bad adventures so badly, you can always arrange it carefully. Brutal male with iron muscles can easily turn out to be weak and whiny in everyday life. Wouldn't it be easier to limit yourself to a few encounters with him and then go back to your reliable husband? The only thing you have to do is make sure your spouse doesn't find out. Then he won't let you in on the details of his adventures either. Show respect for each other, and everything will work out fine." Dad was always very rational. Molly nodded, realizing she had nothing to say and didn't want to. She liked James. She wasn't in love with him, of course, but she liked the sympathy even better. It filled her with peace and confidence. And now there was no more confidence or peace in the world. The image of James presented itself to her in her mind, full-figured, dark-haired, with a soft look and a shy smile. She'd never been particularly interested in what he did for a living, where he went, who his friends were. Their relationship was more like that of people living in a marriage of many quiet years. Returning from any shopping, Molly invariably brought a gift, and for the groom, congratulated on all holidays, gave not important, but pleasant little things. From each trip, she brought a souvenir for the groom. He politely thanked her and kissed her on the cheek. Every morning, the girl received a message wishing her a good day, and they always spent Valentine's Day together in some romantic place, and we'd never even had a real kiss. What's kissing? We were never alone with him. I wonder why. Molly suddenly thought, And this discovery turned out to be so wild, abnormal, that the girl could not stand it and laughed out loud. From the street, it must have looked strange. Behind the wheel of an expensive car sat a young girl with tears on her cheeks and laughed heartily. Betty, peering at Molly from the window of the coffee shop, shrugged. The rich have their quirks. She was roaring like a mad beluga, and now she was laughing. Praline meowed affirmatively. Kathy looked angrily at the stairs leading to the second floor. She managed to get out of the mall without too much loss. When her sister had disconnected her phone, making it impossible for her to reach her, Kathy didn't hesitate for a moment. After all, there were plenty of contacts in her phone. "James, hi, honey," she shouted as soon as her call was answered. "James, I've got a favor to ask of you. Help me out, future relative. I have something with my card. I can't pay for my shopping, and I've got a lot of stuff for the wedding. Please help me out. Just don't wire me any money, but come here yourself. I'm at the mall right now." The mall. James listened patiently and wrote down the address. "Okay, Kathy, I'll be there. Don't worry about a thing." He saw her, barely crossing the threshold of the mall. Kathy waved at him with countless packages. "I'm here, here," she shouted. For nothing really. There was no need to attract attention. It was impossible to miss the bright red coat anyway. James smiled, appreciating the extent of the shopping. "You're buying up the whole store, aren't you?" "Along with the warehouse? Not the whole store, just the stuff I liked." The girl said nonchalantly, "What can I do?" "I don't want to look pale at my only sister's wedding." He glanced again at the boxes and bags. "Is that why you bought 8 pairs of shoes and 24 evening gowns? Are you really going to wear them all at the same time?" He was teasing her, but his smile was so kind that it was impossible to take offense. Count, math genius. Kathy laughed. "You just don't understand anything about women. I couldn't decide which outfit I liked best, so I decided to think about it at home in peace. What can I count on you for? Here you go." James sighed and took out a bank card from his wallet. "I really don't know much about women." "You're right about that. But I know one thing for sure, you can't say no to anything." Kathy looked at him carefully and smiled broadly, though a little sadly. "Such happiness, Molly, will come to you," she said with a little regret and added more quietly, "Why? Why not me? You'll be lucky." James replied and cheerfully picked up the numerous purchases. "You'll get a fiancé that will make all your girlfriends jealous. Come on." Kathy didn't move. "What about you?" She touched James' hand lightly. "Are you going to be jealous of the guy who gets me?" James was confused and took a step backward, bumped his back against one of the customers, mumbled a crumpled apology. "Yeah," he said with all his might, trying to keep his tone casual. "I'm a married man, so I'm not supposed to be jealous of other men's husbands, even if they are married to gorgeous women." "It pleases me that you think I am a gorgeous woman," said Kathy, still in the same special quiet voice, which for some reason on the skin ran goosebumps. "Yes, of course I do. Shall we go? You probably have a lot of important things to do." James hurried off. Cosmetology and manicures, and of course, picking out an outfit for tomorrow. "Can you give me a ride?" Kathy asked him. "I won't even be able to pay for a cab until I get my card sorted out. This is so stupid." Kathy lived in a huge studio with panoramic windows. The view was amazing. The river and forest on the other side. How beautiful it must be here in winter. "There's a second floor here, too," said the girl, letting James into the hallway. "There used to be a communal house here, and before that, The house belonged to some aristocrat long ago under the Tsar. When I grew up, Dad bought 2 apartments for me, one right above the other. So I live in a 2-story palace all by myself. Isn't it boring? James asked. You don't even have a dog. Kathy laughed, kicked off her shoes, and strode across the room with a dancing step. I'm not often home, she said. The dog would probably die of homesickness. I see. James stomped awkwardly in place. Where should I put your bags? I'll go. I don't want to take you away from your business. Kathy waved her hand. Throw them somewhere, anywhere, and they won't get away from me. I'm not letting you go without a cup of tea. Oh no, thanks. No objections. I've got to do something to thank you. And my tea is very special. I bet you've never tasted anything like it. Really? James smiled. Shall we test it? Kathy winked. A small table on wheels, beautifully set, with 2 cups and a vase of candy, Kathy stopped at the window between 2 armchairs. I like to sit here, she said simply. Both in the evening and in the morning, really? I like coffee in the morning. I have an original predilection, don't I? Kathy laughed. Well, try it already, and don't you dare say it doesn't taste good. What is it? James blinked as he took a sip from the cup. The flavor of the drink was strange, not at all like tea. It was more like something between sweet baby fizz and herbal infusion. Kathy genuinely enjoyed the effect. My personal recipe, a tea with white rose petals, orange zest, chocolate shavings, and a pinch of pepper. Pepper? James swallowed hard and took another sip. Yeah, she is beautiful. James thought suddenly, why didn't I notice it before? I'm so embarrassed. She said quietly, Did Molly tell you everything? Did she? No. James shook his head. She didn't. What difference does it make? Yeah, it probably doesn't. You're probably right. Kathy slowly twirled a strand of hair around her finger. There was something mesmerizing about the motion. Would you like some more tea? She offered. I'll get some. James suddenly felt a little dizzy. For some reason, he wanted to get up and leave immediately. But suddenly Kathy's face, her soft, plump lips, were right next to him. How had it happened? She'd just been sitting in the chair. So you know everything and you're going to marry her after all? She whispered, almost touching his face. Now she was sitting on the floor, hugging his knees. You'll be lucky, Kathy. James muttered again. The girl remained silent. You'll be lucky. James gently stroked Kathy's soft golden hair. Her bright blue eyes seemed huge and looked so helpless. Meanwhile, Molly dialed her sister's number for the 3rd time. Where had she gone? Kathy always kept her cell phone handy and never turned it off. Yes, but it was too late to leave. The intercom rang, announcing that all avenues of escape were now cut off. It's Molly. Kathy whispered. Okay, go to the 2nd floor and sit there like a mouse. Quiet as a mouse. Quiet as a mouse, you understand. Molly stood on the doorstep, crumpling a bag with something soft inside. The rustling sound was so loud that Kathy covered her ears with her hands. Stop it, she shouted. Don't rustle. Molly, without waiting for an invitation, went into the kitchen. Well, that's better. At least she stopped rustling. Do you have guests? Asked the girl, noticing the 2nd cup on the table. Kathy smiled conspiratorially at her sister. There were guests, and I didn't have time to put the dishes away, and I haven't made the bed after the guests. Even the sheet didn't overpower. You know how I like to get rid of stress, don't you? What about you? Called James yet? Molly looked at Kathy absently, as if she hadn't immediately remembered who James was and shook her head slowly. "No, I haven't, and he hasn't called me. I don't even know if there's going to be a wedding now. Maybe now. Well, after what happened, he'll change his mind about marrying me. Would that make you sad?" Kathy asked. "Imagine your fiancé calling you now and telling you there's no wedding. Would you be upset?" James, who was lurking on the second floor, turned to listen, but for a long time there was complete silence downstairs. Had they fallen asleep? "Are you going to be upset or not?" Kathy asked again. Molly shrugged. "I'll be upset. I guess I'll be upset. I'm so used to the idea of us getting married that I can't imagine anyone else. But that's not what I'm thinking about right now. I'm trying to figure out how to move on. I guess I should get a job, but I don't know what to do. I've never worked before. I don't even know what it's like. And my dad, what's he gonna do? I'm afraid he'll start drinking, like from the shock. Maybe we should tell Mom. Why don't she come and stay here till Daddy gets over all this trouble?" No, wait. You're thinking about the wrong thing." Her sister interrupted her. "If you marry your James tomorrow, you won't have to think about any work. And then you can help your father, and nothing will change for you. And if I don't marry him?" Molly replied sullenly, "Will there be a wedding at all? You know, this is so stupid. Today at 4 o'clock I have to go to the dressmaker to pick up the dress and pay for it, of course, and I have nothing to pay with. And now I don't even know if I need this dress." "What? You have no money at all?" Kathy gasped. "Not even any cash left? That can't be true. No way. I spent the last of my cash on something. I can't remember what." Molly lost her forehead. Her mind was jumbled. "I remember. I paid for the coffee at the coffee shop before my dad called me. So now the only dress I can afford is this one here." She rustled the bag again, which contained a hideous dress from secondhand. James grinned bitterly. It was still a shame that Molly had come to her sister's house instead of his. It would have been normal for her to go to her fiancé first, to seek support from him. Would he have refused her? Isn't that what people do? And himself. Immediately he objected to himself. He knew what had happened and had not even called her. He thought she would call him herself. He didn't want to pry into her soul. But is that the way to put the question when you know that someone close to you is in trouble? I'm an asshole. The conclusion he came to was disappointing. It turned out that he and Molly were not close people. Close people do not behave like that. A long time ago in high school, he had fallen head over heels in love with his neighbor. The girl's parents were not very sociable people, and for 6 months in a new neighborhood, they never met anyone. Their daughter hadn't made any friends either, and it seemed she'd never even talked to anyone. James had no idea how to approach this arrogant little thing, but chance came to the rescue. They had met at a dog-walking area, and the Spitz, which the beautiful neighbor was leading on a thin leash, suddenly broke free and ran away. James rushed after it. The puppy wasn't used to physical exertion, so it took a couple of minutes to catch him. "Hold your pet." The girl nodded, then pulled a small notebook out of her pocket and quickly wrote a few words in it. "Thank you for helping catch Klaus," he read as the girl handed him the notepad. "I'm mute. My name is Lisa." Soon he and Lisa became firm friends. It turned out that the girl's parents were mute, too, and that was why, not because of arrogance as he had thought at first, they didn't socialize with anyone. Now, right after school, he and Lisa would rush to the park and sit on a bench for long hours, exchanging notes. And then one day it was over. "Tomorrow my parents and I are leaving here forever," she wrote in her notebook. "Tomorrow? Where are you going and why?" "To my grandmother's." Lisa wrote, Daddy says it's the right thing to do. That was all she could get out of her. Now, after all these years, James remembered his mute girlfriend and regretfully realized that even he knew more about her than he did about his fiancée. And his relationship with Lisa had been much more intimate and trusting than with Molly. Congratulations, you idiot. You realized it on the eve of your own wedding. He walked downstairs to the girls at the very moment Molly, wearing her Cinderella dress, was slowly turning around in front of her sister. "Do you like it?" she asked Kathy. "I don't think I've ever seen anything worse in my life, much less worn. It's the most beautiful dress I've ever seen." James said loud and clear, "And you are beautiful, and always will be. In any dress." Molly turned sharply toward him. "James, when you came in, I didn't hear anything?" "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to scare you. I've been here the whole time, just on the second floor. And you and me," he walked over to Molly and took her hand. "We have a lot to talk about. I just realized that we don't know each other at all. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. What do you mean?" Kathy smiled wryly. For some reason, her face was completely distorted from that skewed, evil smile, which was more like a grin. Such a beautiful, gentle face, it suddenly turned into an ugly mask. "We're in the middle of a revelation," she sang softly. "That's good. Before the wedding, it is better to know everything about each other. Oh, you two are so good. James, dear, I propose to begin by explaining to our little Molly what you are doing here and why you were hiding from her on the second floor. Will you?" Molly, not understanding, looked at her sister, then at her fiancé. He stood with his eyes downcast. "Lia, is there something I don't know?" she asked. "What is she talking about? What are you doing with her?" James took her by the shoulders and turned her around to face him. "I cheated on you, Molly. At least I think I did. I don't remember the details, though. And no, I never thought about it before. I don't know how it happened. He started hitting on me." I shrieked, Kathy. "No, he didn't," James replied calmly. "Kathy suggested that I try some special tea. It made me dizzy and drowsy and weak." Yeah. Kathy snorted. "Weakness, drowsiness, listen to him. He will now tell how I seduced him myself, deprived him of his innocence, poor thing." "Kathy?" Ignoring the comments, James continued. "She was very upset about about what happened to your father. She was sitting here on the floor with her head in my lap. I don't remember the rest of it. I woke up naked with her next to me." Molly slowly, like a wind-up doll, turned to face Kathy. "After all, you are my sister," she said quietly. "How could you? And why would you do that? Sister?" She laughed shrilly and turned away to the window. "You've always been a bit naive, Molly," Kathy said without turning around. "No, it's not even naive. You've always been a complete idiot. Look at you and me. What kind of sisters are we? We have nothing in common, not a single trait, and my mother. Have you ever seen her? Ever wonder where she is? Did our father ever think of her?" Kathy turned to Molly and James. Slender, tall, golden-haired, but so alien. "I am not your father's daughter," she said, raising her voice slightly. "I'm his mistress." Molly didn't answer. She just stared at Kathy with widened eyes, tiny beads of sweat beading on her forehead. She could feel it. "Kathy," James began firmly, "calm down and stop talking nonsense. Don't you realize what you're saying?" "Don't know what I'm saying," she said mockingly. "Honey, I haven't even told you half of it yet. How about the fact that I'm not a stranger to your worthy parent either? Are you really my sister?" James smiled. Or maybe a mother or grandmother. Just to be clear? I'm neither, kid. The blonde didn't hesitate. I've been sleeping with your daddy for a long time. And now let's think. Molly, how come your father, a wealthy, serious man, went bankrupt in one day? Use your brain, dummy. These things never happen in 1 second. Someone has been digging under him for months, maybe even years, gathering and sorting information, finding weaknesses. And that someone needed a spy in the enemy camp. Someone with access to everything, to all the secrets. Someone trusted. Who do you think it could be? Think, Molly. A person who's trusted, who can access anything if he wants to, and no one would suspect him. Are you saying it's you? James laughed. That's bloody nonsense. And you know why? There's no reason for my father to pull a scam like that. It's not much of a scam. Kathy pulled the hem of her silk robe tighter and sat down in the low armchair. It's not fraud, my little friends. It's revenge. Many years ago, a man was walking through the winter woods, knee-deep in deep snow. He was clearly not dressed for walking. A light jacket would have withstood at most a light, illuminating frost, but not -25 with wind. Jeans and city sneakers, too, were not suitable for wading through the thicket. The man was dragging a kind of sled made of interconnected power branches. The branches were covered with a sweater and a t-shirt, and on this improvised mattress lay a man, his face pale with pain. His eyes were closed, but the man was awake. From time to time he opened his eyes, groaned softly, and moaned in pain. Nothing. He was encouraged by the one in front. I can smell smoke already. I can smell it from here. We'll soon reach the village, and there someone will give us a lift to the town. Just be patient, just a little longer. Can you feel your legs? I feel. The other one. I wish I didn't feel anything. It hurts like hell. The right one's still okay, but the left one feels like a train ran over it. Be patient. The first one repeated stubbornly and looked glumly ahead. He didn't smell any smoke, so lied to support the wounded. It was not clear where this forest ended, or whether it would end at all. Maybe they were going in circles. He clenched his teeth tighter and tried to pick up his pace. His blonde hair, visible from beneath his hat, was already crusted with ice. His eyelashes were white with frost. His heart grew more and more stiff, an irrational, almost childlike fear that they would wander through the enchanted forest for the rest of eternity. How does it say in fairy tales? The Leshy, if he wants to amuse himself, will make travelers wander more often, will not let them find the way home. He walked minute by minute, falling asleep on the way from terrible fatigue. Don't sleep, don't sleep. You can't sleep now, you'll fall asleep and won't wake up. In order not to fall asleep, he counted his own steps. 1, 2, bad head, 3, watch your step. The wounded man moved on his spruce sled, and again he gave a long sigh. 4, 5, let's go for a walk. We can't get out, moaned the other one. 6, frost can't eat us. 7, we live to please everyone. We'll both be lost here. Why don't you leave me? Hey, 8, we'll survive without asking anyone. If we both die, who'll raise the children? You, James, don't leave me. Nonsense. We won't die. No forest goes on forever, and they don't go in circles. They haven't made a single turn anywhere. It's all right. The forests here, he remembered from the map, are small, and any one of them could be traversed. There's a village up ahead, exactly 100 miles away. He even imagined a few houses under snowy roofs, smoke billowing so there's people around. People are sitting in the house, Some of them are warming themselves by the stove in felt boots. Some of them are reading a book or maybe knitting socks. And on the windows are curtains in flowers or in peas. It doesn't matter. You can have polka dots. There are patterns on the windows. The frost did it. It's beautiful. What else is there? Oh, pies, of course, baked in the oven. Their crust is ruddy, crispy when you bite into it, and inside the pie it's soft, and the filling is delicious. Potatoes in one pie, potatoes in the other. Let it be egg and onion. And the third one should be sweet, with jam. Let there be a third one. Suddenly he stopped and sniffed. No, this time he was not dreaming. The smell of smoke, of warmth, tickled his nostrils pleasantly. So the village was very close. Hold on. He shouted to his comrade, and as fast as he could, he strode forward. After 100 miles, he saw a wide gap between the trees. In front of him in the lowlands, the whole village lay like a palm of his hand. Hey, he shouted at the top of his lungs. People, help! No one answered him, but somewhere in the yard, a small dog yapped a couple of times, and then it went silent. People! The man shouted again. His voice was clearly desperate, but then a heavy door in one of the houses creaked open. Why are you yelling? Do you need help? What is it? How in God's name? Did a truck drive over it? The man in the house they were in had helped to carry the wounded man into the house and set him down on a hard wooden bench. Now he was examining the wounded man's legs, clucking his tongue disapprovingly and muttering something to himself. When he had finished, he shook his head and wrapped the groaning man in a fur blanket. It was an accident, explained the one who was well. It's a blizzard at night. The road is slippery. You can't see anything. We would have stopped to wait it out, but we were in a hurry. His son is waiting at home. My daughter is waiting for me. So we overturned. The car caught fire, but I'm okay. My arms and legs are intact. My rib only hurts, but it's from a bruise. But my partner, you can see for yourself. I can see. I'm not blind. Answered the man. We need to go to town, to the hospital, or he'll die. Help me. We'll carry him to the car together. He came to his senses only in the morning and was surprised to find himself in a white hospital room. His comrade was sitting motionless on the next bed, leaning back on the pillow. Was he dozing? No, not likely. He opened his eyes immediately. Are you all right? William? I'm fine. I'm fine. Are you okay? Should I get the nurse? No, are you okay? I'm fine. You've had surgery, you'll live, and in time you'll learn to walk again. You had 4 fractures. They had to put you back together. But you got it together, right? They did. The patient licked his parched lips. So we had Christmas. Why were you in such a hurry? Oh, I'm thirsty. William, it's after the anesthesia. Wait, I'll be right back. The one called William took glasses and a plastic bottle of water from the nightstand. I'll get you some water. Can you stand up? No? Then let's do it this way. He put one hand under his friend's neck, and with the other he brought the glass to his lips. Drink, Charles, but don't hurry, you'll choke. Charles drank greedily in small gulps, keeping his eyes on William. You are, aren't you? He said, withdrawing his hand from the glass. You saved my life. You could have left me there, and that would have been it. All the debts, all the bills, everything would have stayed there. But you didn't. I don't have any bills to settle with you. William replied sharply. No debts either. Not you, not me. And Nancy? The name hung in the air and seemed to heat him up. Nancy. They both liked her with her snub nose, her freckles, and her tangled black curls. They'd met at a frat party. Then the whole dorm was buzzing, of course. The session was closing. It was there, in the kaleidoscope of ruddy laughing faces, that he first noticed her. Her stubborn black eyes locked into his, never letting go for a second, holding him fast. William stepped closer to her, short, thin as a cane, wearing someone else's leather jacket. "Who are you?" "Nancy." A cigarette between cheekily smiling lips, black curls ringing her eyes. "Oh, you bastard," someone behind him said quietly. "He's got it in for the guy. That's it. Lights out. She's made up her own mind." William said quietly to Charles in the room, "You loved her more than I did." It was fate. A shadow ran across William's face. Whether it was love or just the madness of puberty and all the vagaries of puberty, he didn't get over it. He didn't get over it, but then she caught up with him. "Don't go out with her," someone he knew at the time advised him. "She's got half the city following her around like they're tied up. And her, she only loves herself. Get out of your head before it's too late." He didn't. Things had broken down with his wife before the girl was born, and as soon as the baby was a year old, the couple divorced. Having obtained freedom, the ex-wife went to her homeland. There she was offered a job in her favorite specialty and promised to allocate an apartment. There are not for the child conditions. Sensible, she reasoned. It's cold, and I'll be at work from morning till night. Who'll look after Molly there? Let your daughter stay with you, and I'll keep an eye on her. William didn't mind. Molly stayed with her father. Her mother didn't come often, only a few times, but she corresponded with her daughter regularly. Letters from her came once a week and contained long, colorful descriptions of northern nature and stories about work, about acquaintances. At the end of the letter, Mom always asked her to send her regards to her ex-husband and politely inquired about his health and asked her daughter to take care of Dad. And at Christmas always came cards drawn by Mom's hand. She drew beautifully and could well have been a successful artist. Molly always felt that even though her mom was far away, she was very near. After all, the girl knew everything about her life. William, it seemed, and did not think to resent his ex-wife. On the contrary, often called her, told her a lot about her daughter, and invariably invited her to come and visit and stay for any length of time. Once, when he learned that his ex-wife was hospitalized with pneumonia, he himself went to her, assigning all the cases to assistants and brought with him the best pulmonologist. After she was discharged, he personally negotiated with his superiors a vacation for his ex-wife and paid for her vacation on the ocean coast. Just to be sure, he sent Molly along with her, and in that he was lucky, Charles thought bitterly. Yes, William's marriage didn't work out, but they had separated like people, friends, you might say, and the daughter remained with her father and mother. And James never knew his mother. Nancy, however, still occasionally appeared in Charles's life. There were, I think, only 3 such episodes. She somehow managed to find his phone number, and she always called at night. The first call was from New York. What was Nancy doing there? That remains a mystery. She called to wish Charles a Merry Christmas. There was a festive, cheerful noise in the receiver. She must have been calling from somewhere on the street. The city was rumbling behind her, bursting with people's laughter, deafening with fireworks, and voices speaking every language in the world were heard from everywhere. Nancy did not want to answer any questions, but she laughed merrily and wished her ex-husband health and happiness. "Why did you run away?" Charles shouted into the phone. "Why did you abandon the child? Do you even know what I named him? Do you know what your son's name is? Don't worry. Everything is fine with me." Nancy spoke dryly and immediately disconnected. A few months later, there was a call from Madrid. Not once did Nancy ask about her son, and she still didn't know his name. Cuckoo, cuckoo, still cuckoo. Bitter, Charles concluded. Forget it. You have a son growing up. Be happy for him. His friend advised him, and it was hard not to agree with him. When the children grow up, they'll get married. William smiled, cradling his daughter. Charles nodded again. That's a good idea, he said thoughtfully. Their fathers are friends. They've known each other since childhood, and love is love, but family is different. Strange, he thought so sincerely. But now, lying in a hospital bed, saved by his best friend and reassembled by the doctors, Charles felt a cold, slithering, snake-like envy crawling into his soul. Is this what William is in for, such inhuman luck? What had he done to deserve it? Fate saved him from Nancy, that's fine. You can explain that by the accidents of love. But what about now? They were traveling in the same car, rolled over together. Only Charles is lying there, unable to get up. And William, not even a scratch. He's a lucky bastard. I couldn't bear to think about it. It made me feel ashamed and even blacker than before. So what? Roughly interrupted James. Unhurried story Kathy. Molly's father saved my life, and he ruined him for that. Do you hear yourself? Not for that. Kathy sighed, but because William, as it turned out, was luckier in everything. He and his wife were separated humanely, no arguments, no quarrels. He was in a car accident, and he didn't get a bruise or a scratch. He was unharmed, and Charles pulled him out. So he's the one for luck. What's this nonsense? Shocked, Molly whispered. Kathy's crazy stories still didn't fit in her head. They couldn't be true. It's all made up. Nonsense. Just because Daddy was luckier. The blonde shrugged her shoulders. Isn't that enough? I, for one, understand Charles perfectly well. Even if you and I are compared, I look at you, you fool, and I don't understand. Why are you so lucky? You were born into a rich family. You've never been denied anything. Your father was so caring. Even introduced me to you as an unknown older sister. Did not want to traumatize his daughter with the message that her daddy beautiful, a mistress appeared, and you have good suitors. Maybe he's a knave fool. I won't argue with that. But he's a good, decent, loyal man, and his pockets are not windy. Am I worse than you in any way? No, not worse, that's for sure. Maybe even prettier than you. And as for brains, there's nothing to talk about. I'm definitely the smarter of the two of us. Do you know where I lived? Do you know where I'm from? No, you don't. You bought that ugly dress in the second hand today, and my sister works in that second hand as a saleswoman. Her husband sits across the street, selling bath brooms. Two twin boys, they send their children to grandmothers and grandfathers and work hard to earn money. And you've never worked a minute in your life, but you've never known need. Everything was brought to you and others like you on a golden platter. Right? But it's not my fault, Kathy. It's not my fault. Molly screamed. Did I take anything from you or your sister? Are you poor yourself? Not poor, not rich, but as it comes. Kathy grinned. I didn't get all this from the sky. I'm not happy with your dads, and I have to pretend to you, my stepsister. But it's better than selling rags in a garage or brooms. Huh, your father always thought we'd be friends, but there's one thing he didn't count on. I didn't want to be friends with you. But you. She sent James an affectionate smile. You could have married me instead of her. Kathy nodded at Molly. How am I any worse? James was silent for a long time. You disgust me. Finally, he said, "Molly, let's go." He squeezed his fiancée's hand tightly and turned toward the door. "Stop!" Kathy shouted. "Stop!" In one leap, as if transformed into a wild cat. She jumped out of her chair and rushed to the door, blocking the exit. "You forgot something, my sweet," she purred, but the purr was menacing. "You did rape me, didn't you? It was so horrible." She lowered her eyes and pretended to wipe away a tear. It looked pretty convincing. "You realize I don't even have to file a police report, right? Just complaining to your dad and your dad's dad would be enough." She looked at Molly. "It's scary to think what the consequences could be." "That's a lie," said James in an icy tone. "Get away from the door." The blonde didn't think to move. "But so be it," she said conciliatingly. "I won't say anything to anyone if you agree to pay me a small amount of money every month, that's enough." "You're not making any sense, Kathy." Molly tried to reach for the doorknob, and at the same second, Kathy grabbed the girl's wrist with her sharp fingernails. Let me go, it hurts, Kathy." But the blonde, without loosening her grip, with her free hand, grabbed Molly by the hair. "Not so fast," she hissed. James, squeezing between the girls, covered his fiancée with his own. Molly slumped against the wall, her face pressed into her fiance's back. Kathy, shrieking louder and louder, cut into her ears. "Help, help! Call the police! Calm down," James said, canting slightly. "There's been an attack." Safiya continued to shout, "Call the police." Keeping the blonde at arm's length was proving difficult. Kathy scratched and wriggled, hoping to get her nails on Molly. Something glassy fell to the floor with a clinking sound and rolled across the laminate floor. Molly quickly squatted down and grabbed the find first. The vial was small and could easily be hidden in the palm of her hand. The girl glimpsed the label and showed it to her fiancé. "Clophaline," he read it loudly, and then took the vial in his hand and threw it at Kathy. "You're the one who dropped it." Contemptuously, he threw it. The blonde caught the vial and quickly slipped it into the pocket of her robe. "Come on, Molly," James repeated and swung open the front door. "We should go." It was dark in Charles's apartment. William had asked his friend to turn off all the lights. "The light was making my eyes hurt." He explained, "It must be my nerves." They talked in the dark, illuminated only by the smoldering lights of cigarettes. From time to time, long streaks of light ran across the ceiling. Someone drove by with their headlights on. It was tolerable. You could close your eyes, and then your eyes would rest. But now, oblivious to the pain, he flicked the switch himself. Charles squeezed his eyes shut, but William didn't seem to notice the bright beam of light striking his eyes. His face was pale, frightened. "What are you saying?" he asked, shocked by his comrade's words. "What was that just now?" "Is this a joke?" Charles sighed. "I knew Kathy was looking for someone to leak your data to." He repeated, "You know you've got plenty of competitors. Getting to them isn't that big a deal. And they pay for information, and they pay well. All she had to do was choose the highest bidder." "Why would she do that?" "The boil, William. That I didn't give her enough money, kept her full, bought her an apartment. It was enough for all her desires. Did you give her enough?" "Fine." Charles calmed him down. There was enough for a good life, but the girl wanted stability, guarantees she did not know how to save. It's not in her nature. Marrying you was out of the question, and the years go by. She was afraid that you will play with her, and as her age comes up, you will find someone younger, fresher, and Kathy in circulation on the sidelines of life. So she wanted to be on the safe side to secure her future. Why? William rubbed his eyes. They were starting to hurt again. She didn't tell me, but she could have asked for what she wanted, couldn't she? A bank account, a house, a business. I wouldn't have spared her that. Charles laughed. Women, who the devil can tell when they don't always understand themselves. But she could sell the information, and she wanted it badly. The rumor had already spread among the competitors, and they were all ears. That's when I entered the arena. Made up a pathetic story about how I've been jealous of you all my life because you've always been undeservedly lucky. And so on and so forth. Lying, I hope? Not exactly. Charles shrugged guiltily. I was jealous of you. I was, many years ago, when, remember, you dragged me through the woods almost alive. So I had that sin. I was jealous. Even though I was ashamed that you weren't hurt in the accident, that Molly had a normal mother, not a slutty Nancy. I saw her, William said quietly. Nancy. I didn't want to tell you, but I went to Boston last year, and my parents are buried there. I went to the cemetery to worship the graves, and there was a fresh grave. Nancy. I saw the picture on the monument. I recognized it immediately. Someone from her family was there. I think it was a cousin, a second cousin, maybe a third cousin. I don't remember. Cleaning up her grave. I asked him what happened. Like her lover killed her, either out of jealousy or just drunk. She's always had a lot of admirers, lovers, and jealous men. At first, I wanted to call you and tell you, but then I thought, why? Only to reopen wounds. We've been strangers to her for a long time, said Charles calmly. She was a spoiled girl with a rotten streak. Well, may she rest in peace. She never even saw her son or knew his name. God be with her. The main thing is that you still have your capital, so you have nothing to grieve about, and the children's wedding is tomorrow. Do you think they'll live together? They will, I'm sure. William smiled and hugged his friend. Meanwhile, James and Molly were walking down the street, holding hands. You know, Molly, said the boy, I really like your dress. I really do. I really do. It's cool. You can say that too. Molly fixed the ruffle on the skirt and laughed. It's a real rag. It's just for mopping the floor. James only gripped the bride's hand tighter, brought it to his lips, and kissed the wrist marks left by Kathy's claws. You are the most beautiful in any dress. He said so quietly that it was almost impossible to hear the words. But the girl heard and smiled at her fiancé, shyly and gently. Then I like it too. Her smile became mischievous. That's what I'm going to marry you in tomorrow. James laughed, picked Molly up in his arms, and shouting loudly how much he loved her, began to twirl her around and kiss her on the lips. Is this really love? Molly closed her eyes and imagined their wedding. They would live in a big house and have 3, no, better 4 mischievous children with whom they would enjoy playing catch-up. 2 happy grandfathers, Molly's father William and James's father Charles.